from being a person living in Canada, Canadian living in Canada,
yes,
that's the coldest place on earth for many people have been there and experienced it, and it's brutal. So now suddenly you move to Puerto Rico. You got an
oh
opportunity
no,
for.
no, there no suddenly, no suddenly. There was a long road. You know,
Explain me
people
that
say,
long road.
yeah, people say things happen overnight, but things very rarely happen overnight. There's a lot of backstory. So my first, let's see, I almost work backwards. My first foray into Puerto Rico was December 1998. And that was working for WWC. That was for Carlos.
Oh.
And I came in for just around 3 weeks. Prior to that, I was in Mexico for a few months. But what happened, I guess, actually, you know what, let's go this way. Because there was some moves into the States back and forth between here and Canada. I lived in Nashville for a while. It was while I was in Nashville that it was in May 1998, a fellow worker, a friend, Chad Casey, we were wrestling together on the Independence. He was from the States. He told me, he's like, you got to come to the show. There's a guy that's going to be there, because WWF was going to be in Nashville for Monday Night Raw. So kind of that weekend before that, Saturday, Sunday, Chad Casey says, hey, come to the show. There's a guy there. He's got connections with like Puerto Rico and Mexico and WWF. His name is Victor Quiñonez.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So we go to the show. I think Chad worked. I didn't work the show, but I met Victor. And so like we went out to eat afterwards, and he was really cool. And he says to us, like, you guys come to Monday Night Raw. We'll see if we can do anything. So of course, we're thinking dark matches, whatever. We're just happy to be backstage. So the Monday night comes. I think it was like Monday, May 18th. The episode's on, and this episode is on the network. So at least, I don't know if it's still, everything's getting deleted, but anyways. Yes. So, backstage, this is the first time I get to meet the Boricuas. So I met like Savio and Miguel. This was the night Val Venus made his debut. Oh shoot, what's his name? Papi Chulo was there. So a lot of the guys are kind of like the Puerto Rican guys. Victor's, guys were there, plus everybody else. So at one point, someone came up to us and said, like, hey, like, Victor's looking for you guys, and he's in this room. I can't remember if it was catering or not, but we meet him, and he says, we got an opportunity for you, pointing to me. Go find, I think it was like Tony Gurria, go find somebody and they'll tell you what to do. So I ended up being a security guard that night. And I'm proud of this do you want to translate from here, or are you good to keep going?
I'll translate first. Okay. It is easier. Antes de llegar a IWA hay una historia bastante importante. Él ya había luchado con Carlos Colón por 3 semanas en Puerto Rico para WWC. Eso es algo que por lo menos yo no sabía y no estaba en su biografía. Posteriormente tuve la oportunidad de ir a México, pero antes de eso también, él estaba en Nashville, él estaba viviendo en Nashville, y en aquel momento dado los tryouts ocurrían, o las oportunidades, porque el promotor o el scout iba a los eventos. ¿Quién llegó a ese evento en Nashville? Victor Quiñonez, de esa manera es que él lo conoce, y le da la oportunidad de llegar a Raw, esa misma noche, ese lunes. Fue en mayo del 98, él llega allí y está todo el mundo en backstage, entre ellos los boricuas, Sabio, Miguel, Castillo, Estrada, Papi Chulo, que es ese Ríos, entre varias otras personas, y de repente Quiñones llega, los mira y dice, tengo una oportunidad para ti, y señala a Andy. Andy tiene una oportunidad, tenemos un trabajo para ti como seguridad. Claro, un trabajo como extra en WWE, eso es una oportunidad excelente, así que vamos para encima, dijo Andy. Now you can continue.
All right, so so you're gonna be a security guard, and what's cool is, I'm gonna start this off, to me, I'm proud of for 2 reasons. One, most times when we see the extras, you get like that one spot where something happens, that's it, you get your butt kicked, whatever. I was featured throughout the show, which I don't know if that's ever happened with an extra like that. And the other cool part of this was, as a security guard, my role was to keep Stone Cold Steve Austin out of the building, because at this point he was deep in his feud with Vince McMahon, of course. So if you go back, it's a fun thing to watch. But I go through, do the thing with Austin. He beats the crap out of me. whatever. We spend the rest of the show. I'm with some of Nashville police. We're looking for Stone Cold Steve Austin. We're going to get him arrested. By the end of the show, he has to apologize to me. I'll let you go find out how that ends. Not how you think. Anyways, so that was that. That was cool. Everybody thought it went really well. Basically, Victor says, he says, look, he says, when you're done in Nashville or whatever, if you're looking, if you need some help, he says, I'll do my best to help you out. Okay, so that was cool. So fast forward a few months to end of August 1998. I'm still living in Nashville. At the time, I didn't have work papers. I didn't have a visa or anything. I just crossed the border and I was just working all the independents, doing whatever I could. So I could only be in the United States for so long. So I had to go back to Canada, and I had driven down. I had my car. So before I left Nashville, I called Victor, and I can't remember if I left a message. I said, look, like I'm heading back to Canada. This is what's going on. If there's anything you can help me with, that would be great. And cell phones were still, the big blocks. So I mean, like I had one, but it's not like it was getting used. That was in case of emergency. So 2 days I drove back to Winnipeg, and I was staying with my grandma. So when I got to her place, she has a message. She says, oh, this Victor Quiñonez called, left you a message. So this is 2 days. Like, I called, I drove, left Nashville, got back. So I called him back. He says, how would you like to go work in Mexico? When do I start? Didn't matter, whatever. When do I start? So that was kind of the end of August, beginning of September. Beginning of October, I was in Mexico working for a promotion out of Monterrey called Triple L. There was a wrestler, his name was Antifaz, and it was his mom that ran the promotion. So Antifaz was there, Super Crazy was there, Tarzan Boy was there. We get the CMLL guys. So I got to work with Nego Casas. I basically the who's who. Yeah, I got to work, I'm trying to think of names, but if you drop names, I probably worked with them. Zorro was there, Ray Bucanero was there, all the guys. I did that for a couple months, for 2 months, went back to Canada. IWA hadn't started yet, but he's like, how would you like to come to Puerto Rico and kind of see what Puerto Rico's like, and you can work for a few weeks with Carlos Colon's promotions. So I said, sure. Beginning of December, I flew to Puerto Rico, and that's where I first met Ricky Santana, Fidel Sierra, Brett Sanders, Glamour Boy Shane, and those were kind of the boys. And so for 3 weeks, I was doing shows with WWC. I think I worked with like Bad Boy, and I was doing like tag team stuff with Frankie Lancaster, I think. Frankie Lancaster. Frankie, he used to do WCW. Anyways, and I was doing stuff like with Ricky and those guys. So I worked for 3 weeks there, and that was kind of my first official start into Puerto Rico.
I'll translate that. Llegando ya a la historia de Raw, ¿contra qué persona tiene que él evitar que entre al edificio? De todas las personas, Stone Cold Steve Austin en su punto más caliente. Él fue un guardia de seguridad que estuvieron anunciando y mostrando todo el show. Tiene un rol que tiene que dar a la policía. Stone Cold tiene que disculparse con él. Les dice, vean el show, no les voy a decir cómo termina. No termina bien, obviamente, Stone Cold al otro lado. Y él estaba trabajando en Estados Unidos sin una visa. Obviamente en aquel momento de tener la oportunidad de ir a Canadá por una cantidad de tiempo fija, llegar en vehículo, por tierra, que eso fue lo que hizo. Él llegó con su carro, y cuando llegó el momento dado de que su tiempo estaba pasando, pues tengo que devolverme a Canadá para hacer todas las cosas de manera legal. Llama a Victor Quiñonez, porque Quiñonez le dijo, oye, si necesitas algo, me llama. Llama a Quiñonez, le dice, mira, yo me voy a regresar a Canadá. Si surge alguna oportunidad, te lo agradeceré. Y se fue. Andy va guiando a su casa 2 días. Llega a casa de su abuela en Canadá, y de allí, desde que él lo llamó hasta que él llegó allá, ya tenía el mensaje de Victor Quiñonez. La abuela le dice, mira, tienes un mensaje de Víctor, un tal Victor Quiñonez. Víctor, perfecto, lo llama, y Víctor le dice, oye, ¿qué te parece venir a trabajar a México? Y Andy dice, claro, ¿cuándo empiezo? Y entonces llega a México a la promoción Triple L en Monterrey, y allí tuvo la oportunidad de luchar con muchísima gente, Rey Bucanero, Negro Casa, estaba el Zorro por ahí también, lo mejor de lo mejor que había en México, gente del Consejo. Y posterior a eso, Víctor Quiñonez lo llama y le dice, mira, todavía no está IWA, Vamos para Puerto Rico para que tengas una oportunidad en WWC. La empresa de Carlos llega a Puerto Rico y allí conoce a Fidel Sierra, a Ricky Santana, a Shane the Glamour Boy, a Sanders, todo ese tipo de grupitos, los boys como él le llama, y así es que comienza su travesía en Puerto Rico. What do you remember of your first days in Puerto Rico, especially the crowd, man? Everything's different here.
Everything is different. What do I remember? Honestly, not a lot. I remember Puerto Rico being hot. I remember it being beautiful. I remember that it was different. I mean, and I read all the wrestling magazines throughout the years. You see some of the video, so I knew that Puerto Rico, the setup wasn't like it was in the United States or Canada, where you had fans ringside. You had the canchas, you had the ring, el medio de la cancha, and then the people up in the stands. That was different, but it was cool though, because it was a different experience. The Puerto Rico fans, especially then, they still believed in professional wrestling. The people were hot, muy caliente, and they loved the good guys. They hated the bad guys. And to me, that's, even all through my years to Puerto Rico, some of the best fans, some of the best wrestling fans in the world to wrestle in front of, was in Puerto Rico.
Translate that. ¿Qué recuerda Andy de aquella primera etapa en Puerto Rico? Lo primero, que la isla era caliente como el demonio. Esto aquí hace un calor horrible. Pero bueno, eso es parte de la vida, y más para un canadiense que viene del frío. Llega a Puerto Rico, entre las varias cosas que recuerdan, las canchas. Las canchas tenían gente en el ringside. La gente era caliente, era bien caliente. La gente odiaba los rudos, amaba los técnicos, y te lo iban a dejar saber. Recuerda las revistas, hay varias cosas de esa época que Andy todavía tiene en su corazón. After WWC, when did you arrive to IWA? Did you left back to Canada and then came back?
Yeah, so that was December 98. Now things are going to get a little bit dicey as I'm trying to remember the timeline. I probably should have did a bit more research into this, because my mind isn't going to help here. I came back to Canada, started 1999. March, I went back to Mexico for Triple L. So I went for 3 months. I think it was like March, April, and May. I can't remember if I went back to Puerto Rico in this time. IWA hadn't started yet. We were kind of getting going. I know there was at least one trip in there to Japan for Battle Arts. And then with IWA, and you may remember the dates better than I do, we did a series of TV tapings. 99. So they brought it, that was somewhere in 99. And so that was kind of my return to Puerto Rico. I know we had I'm trying to remember the names. We had like Ricky Santana. I remember Val Venus, like they were a tag team. I think they were like the first tag team champions. We had some WWF guys there, and basically we were just creating content. I think what we did was we created about 3 months worth of TV. I know there was I think the couple of the Conchas in Carolina, the smaller one, the Bajo Techo, the Carolina. I think that was one of the ones. And I think we also did one of the bigger stadiums. And that's where we were kind of filling stuff up as far as TV, because the idea was they were going to run several months of TV before we started doing live shows. And then somewhere in there, I don't know if it was 99 or 2000, there was also the big show, I think it was at Beethorn Stadium, where I was like, Undertaker was there.
Beethorn.
It was Beethorn,
Irán Beethorn, sí.
Yeah. And it was like mostly like it was whatever, I forget what the name of the show was. I know it
because there was another one with The Rock and Kane, but that wasn't.
Yeah, no, because that was IWA was already running then. We were already going. Yeah, this was early. This was, I think, like early beginning IWA days. Well, I remember what that though was the very first match, like the dark match, if you will, was myself versus some young green guy. I think his name was like Peter the Stripper or whatever.
That's Apollo.
Yes, it was. and I love this for two reasons. And I love Apollo, and I mean, and he's gone out to so many great things. I mean, like, dude's just massive. We had that very long ramp way to the ring, because I mean, if you remember, the ring was closer to the stands, but we had like the big WWE style entrance. So they had everything up here. We had the long entrance. You had to take a golf cart kind of around. to get to just to walk in. And I remember, I don't know if Apollo remembers this. I remember Victor, because Apollo, he was doing the Peter the Stripper thing, right? So that was part of the, almost like the Alex Wright kind of dancey stuff. And I remember Victor telling Apollo, like, don't do that. When you come out, you know, like, carry yourself well, be serious. So I came out, and I mean, I'm like a Benoit Malenko guy. I'm, you know, serious and whatever. And I remember Apollo coming out, and then at one point he started doing it, and the crowd started booing. I was like, oh, I mean, it was, like I said, I think he recovered and did all right, but it was just one of those things. So we had the match. I think it was a good match. I know I went over, and that was a good show there. We did the TV tapings, and then from that point, it was basically IWA. That was it. I think I did a couple trips to Japan, a couple more trips to Japan for Battle Arts, but then like I was IWA for life.
I'll translate that story. Posterior a su salida de WWC, usó varias cosas. Tuvo la oportunidad de ir a México de vuelta, fue a su primer tour en Japón con Battle Arts, y de momento llega el momento de que IWA finalmente existe, lo traen a Puerto Rico de regreso, comienza IWA a trabajar para el 99. Entre las múltiples cosas que hizo, luchó en el show de Undertaker en Puerto Rico en el Beathorn. Hay una historia en particular porque la primera lucha fue un dark match y fue Andy Anderson contra Peter el Stripper. Peter el Stripper era el León Apolo, actualmente era el primer personaje de Apolo, y Andy recuerda, entre las cosas que Víctor, las direcciones le dio, Peter salía haciendo su baile y sus cosas, y Quiñonez le dice, no hagas eso. Entonces Andy sale bien serio, Malenko, Benoit, enfocado, vamos por la rampa bien larga, por ahí para abajo, y de momento Peter el Stripper sale y dice, se jodió la lucha. La gente empezó a lucharlo, y después de eso, pues sí hizo unos tours de regreso a Japón para Battle Arts, pero fue prácticamente un IWA guy for life, como él dice posterior a eso. You know, IWA was a pretty particular company. How complicated for you or easy was just, you know, living in Puerto Rico versus being a nomad, because you were basically in Mexico, Nashville, Canada, Japan, everywhere. Yeah. So how complicated or easy was the transition to living in Puerto Rico?
It was easy. It was easy. First of all, it was Puerto Rico. Okay. And to be a young guy on an island where you're minutes from the beach, you know, and basically your full-time job is to wrestle. And, you know, you talked about being a nomad, about being on the road. I always enjoyed being on the road. I never, you know, I mean, it's tough and it's rough on the body, but I always enjoyed the road trips. I always enjoyed the flights, the hotels. That was never an issue for me. But with Puerto Rico, because, you know, it's a small island, that was one of the best parts, though, was that no matter, even if you're going across the island, I'm trying to think of like some of the town, like Mayagüez or something, you know, if you're based out of like the San Juan area and you're going across the island to Mayagüez, it's a couple hours, but at the end of the night, you're still back home in your own bed. So it didn't matter where we were going on the island. We were back home every night. So, you know, whereas a lot of the, like, again, you used to nomads where you're traveling, it's like a different hotel every night. Again, I didn't mind that, but it's still a lot better when you could come back home every night. So Puerto Rico was awesome for that as a territory, that, you know, that we were fortunate enough we could work so many different towns, but yet it was never more than a couple hours drive. I mean, you're either going across the island, or if you're going up into the mountains, a lot of times I know those are a bit longer drives just because the roads weren't always the best, or it was 2 lanes. Like, was it like Barranquitas? Is that one of the ones that was up? Barranquitas, yeah. I know there's a few other ones in there, but yeah, like to go up to that took a bit more time. But yeah, end of the day, you were always back home. And that's, I'm sure anybody in the wrestling business will tell you that's an awesome thing.
I'll translate that. ¿Cuán difícil o fácil fue adaptarse a vivir a Puerto Rico siendo ya una persona que estaba todo el tiempo en la carretera? Fue fácil, obviamente. Puerto Rico es un lugar bonito, la playa cerca, un par de minutos, un muchacho joven, como que that's the dream. Y entonces encima de eso tenías la oportunidad de que no importa cuántos pueblos lucharas, siempre llegabas de vuelta a tu casa, porque Puerto Rico tiene esa ventaja. Vivías en San Juan, te tocaba ir a Mayagüez al otro lado, no importa, son 2 horas. Viras otra vez a tu casa y te acuestas a dormir en tu casa, en tu hogar. Antes obviamente no le molestaba ir donde fuera y quedarse en un hotel, pero pues obviamente tenía esas ventajas, pero obviamente cuando habían ciudades como pueblos como Barranquitas o Ajuntas o Jayuya o Utuado.
Junta, Jayuya, yes.
Utuado, que son centro de la isla, pues las curvas, la carretera que era como que un poquito complicado, pero de lo mismo, regresabas a tu casa y tenías la oportunidad de quedarte, que no era muy común, vamos a decirlo, en el circuito. How was your relationship?
Una cosa, let me tell you one thing, though. We're talking about Puerto Rico, and as you were talking, it made me think about one thing, and I know you, and I know all the listeners will know what I'm talking about. I was very fortunate enough because I was, IWA original, so I was there from the beginning, 1999. I picked up on the language. I was able to speak enough Spanish because Ricky Santana, Fidel Sierra, early on, they always made me drive. So I always learned the roads. I always knew where to go, which helped me to, if I didn't have somebody with me that knew where to go, I knew the island pretty well. So one thing that I kind of got put in charge with was that as we have the new guys come in, if they're coming in, whether it's Japan or the States or wherever, Andy always kind of helped them out, looked after them. So I always had to explain to everybody, you talk about getting used to being in Puerto Rico time. Mira.
They're always late.
If we say the show starts at a las 8 en la noche,
it's not happening.
8:30, 8:45, 9 o'clock. Okay, we're going into intermission. ¿Cuántos tiempo?
15 minutos. It's not happening.
15, 20 minutos. 45 minutes later, we'll see how the beer and the empanadillas are selling before we move back. Oh, dude, after the show, I'm going to meet this girl, at 12:30 at night, we're going to meet her. No, don't make plans because you think the show is going to end at 11. No, it's just not going to happen. So God bless Puerto Rico. God bless the Puerto Ricans. What I told people was this. Whatever the population was, I think it was like 2 million people. I said, it's a population of 2 million to 1. Do not think you are going to change things, and because you're going to show up on time means it's going to happen. Puerto Rico is going to happen when Puerto Rico is going to happen. That's a scientific fact.
The interesting fact is that I'm not I usually arrive on time on places and I'm sitting there lonely. And it's for example, to build up multiple match cards here in Puerto Rico for Hugo, I've worked with him. So they told me, okay, we need you here at 12. So I'm there at 12 and no one's there at 12. It's just me sitting down holy shit. But I'll translate that interesting fact to Spanish. Andy aprendió español y viajaba con Fidel y con Ricky Santana, quienes lo hacían guiar para que en el caso de que no tuviese nadie, pudiese conocer dónde estaba parado, Puerto Rico. Y Andy se aprendió todas las carreteras de Puerto Rico, sabía para dónde iba, sabía dónde estaban los buenos lugares, los malos lugares, etc. Y siempre entonces cuando venía alguien de afuera, específicamente de Japón, pues Andy era el que le decía, mira, vamos a explicarte las cosas, entre ellas, la hora de Puerto Rico. La hora de Puerto Rico es un chiste porque, la cartelera empieza a las 8 de la noche. Nunca empieza a las 8 de la noche. Nunca. 8:30, 8:45, 9. El tiempo medio o el intermedio va a durar 15 minutos. Nunca duran 15 minutos, 45 minutos, media hora, 1 hora, dependiendo de cuántas cervezas y empanadillas se estén vendiendo, que es real. Tú ves esas cantinas a la media hora explotar llena. A los 25 minutos se empieza a parar todo el mundo a comprar cerveza, comida y medio mundo, después de fumarse un cigarrillo afuera. Entonces, la cartelera, voy a hacer planes, voy a conocer una muchacha a las 2:30 de la noche, esto va a estar excelente. Nunca cuentes con que la cartelera se va a acabar a las 11 porque nunca se acaba a tiempo. Y como él dice, aquel momento eran 2 millones, no son 3 millones. 3 millones de personas a una persona. No vas a cambiar el ratio, está imposible. El puertorriqueño siempre llega tarde por naturaleza, así que me siento en ese sentido como que un poquito anormal a mi gente. How was your relationship with the guys, with Savio, with Quiñonez, with Santana, with Fidel, Apolo, Banderas, Shane, everyone on NWA?
I'd like to think it was good. I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty easy to get along with. I like to think I'm a nice guy. In terms of the wrestling business, especially
You're Canadian. Yeah, it's impossible to hate Canadians.
Exactly. Thank you. I loved the business. I loved what I was doing. I loved where I was. I was shooting for WWE. I was shooting for Japan. I think I was respectful to all the veterans. And, it's I was always about business. I just wanted to be the best match and do the best. So I think everybody from from the top to Victor, Savio, Miguel, I think those guys appreciated and respected me, liked me. Working with all the boys, like anything, you get along with some better than others. Some guys just might be like, hey, how's it going? You greet everybody when you get to the show. Other guys, you might have been closer with. But I mean, Ricky, Apollo, got along good with those guys. Shane, fellow Canadian. He was always great. Guys coming in, slash Venom. He and I go way back, so he was always cool. Everybody, Luke, Dutch, I think everybody was cool. IWA it was a good locker room. We always had a good group of people, so we didn't have a lot of the jerks and the guys that were in business for themselves. I think if there was anybody there that didn't want to be there or was too much for themselves, they just didn't last long.
I'll translate that. En aquel momento, bueno, es imposible odiar a un canadiense. Vamos a partir de ese punto. No se puede odiar a una gente amable por naturaleza. Entonces, tienes un camerino lleno de personas como Apolo, Ricky, Shane, Mantel, Luke Williams, que era uno de los bookers, entre otras personas. Pues Andy siempre tuvo una relación buena con todos, siempre fue respetuoso con los veteranos, lo mismo en Japón, lo mismo en México, lo mismo en Puerto Rico. Y si había alguien como que no encajaba en el camerino, pues nunca duraba, porque todo el mundo, esa era una de las claves de IWA, que todo el mundo era unido en ese camerino. While being active and working for IWA, you had a few opportunities outside of Puerto Rico, and I'm talking about WWF at that point. What do you recall of your first WWF trial? I mean, you wrestled guys like Big Show, Rikishi, Orlando Jordan, on multiple trials in WWF. So how was that experience for you?
To be actually in WWF was awesome. In 2000, they were still running camps out of Stamford, Connecticut. Dory Funk Jr., Dr. Tom Pritchard, those were the guys that were in charge of it then. I was in one of those. Shane and I went into one of those in 2000. That was really good. You'd get the look like you look good, you still need more experience, keep working, that's what you'd hear. My first ever WWF dark match was against Shane, and so that was good because we had the familiarity with each other.
Shane or Canadian Glamour
Shane
Boy.
The Glamour Boy. Shane the Glamour Boy.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so, and that was, obviously because Victor was still in, Savio was still in with WWF, so I think that kind of helped to kind of put those two guys together. We had the match in Philadelphia, which was, you're right in the heart of ECW country, and there was a tough crowd, but we still got over, so that was cool. I will say this, because anytime I tell the story, I always bug Shane. So I was a heel. I never went... At the time, I think they were almost always putting over baby faces in dark matches. Heels never went over. I was always a heel, which I was cool with. For the love of everything holy, we know Shane, loves to do his elbow from the top rope. He loves to do the point. We do this match, and he climbs up to the second rope. He does the point. He gets up to the top rope. He does the point. It's not the fact that we're in Philadelphia. It's the fact that I'm laying there and it's taking him like 5 minutes to drop like I could have sat up Undertaker style, looked at my watch and be like, dude, come on, let's go. And then lay back down, have him drop the elbow. So, it was a good match. And I was just like to poke fun at Shane, and he knows it too, because that's nothing that he doesn't know. But Shane and I worked each other the first night. The next night, because that's when they were still doing Raw Monday nights, SmackDown Tuesday, we wrestled a tag team match against Kai and Tai, Taka and Funaki. That was a lot of fun. I know that got a good reaction. So that was kind of my first times there. Other matches was, who do we say? Rikishi was one night. There was Brett Dale, who was in WWC. I worked him in a dark match. And then my other set of dark matches, Harry Smith, Davey Boy Smith Jr. Yeah, and he was still quite young then. This was up in Canada. I worked him in a dark match. And then the following night was SmackDown. That was the Orlando Jordan match. So those were kind of like my 6 official WWE non-IWA kind of matches. And it was great stuff. I didn't care what I was doing. The Rikishi match, if you watch that one, I didn't take the stink face. Thank goodness. And I even told him when we were going over the match, I said, like, hey, like, you know, because WWE, they like to do stuff to test, right? If you're willing to do stuff. And I said, hey, like, whatever. And he's like, nope. He says, Vince wants me. And I still remember this. He goes, no, he says, we're not doing the stink face because Vince wants me to be a little bit more serious. So we're not going to do it. And then he's like, unless you want me to. I'm like, nope, we're good. We're good.
I'll go with that. Andy tuvo varias oportunidades en WWF. Hubo varios trayouts. Su primer tryout fue, obviamente, siempre la oportunidad de estar ahí fue excelente. Siempre le decía, pues mira, hay que mejorar esto, hay que mejorar esto. Hay varias cositas. Como que sigue haciendo buen trabajo, te estamos viendo. Pero su primer dark match fue ante Shane the Glamour Boy. Fue en Filadelfia, en Pensilvania. Y Shane todo el tiempo, antes de cada movida, hace esto. Yo lo digo por Filadelfia porque Sabu también luchaba ahí, pero Andy lo decía como que ya yo estoy tirado en el suelo, mano, tú estás apuntando, vas a meterte por la cuerda, te trepas a la tercera cuerda, vuelves a apuntar y es como que Andy está al Undertaker, mira, mano, vámonos, brinca, dame el maldito codazo, estás aquí empezando a perder el tiempo. Pero tuvo varios dark matches, Harry Smith, que actualmente es Davey Boy Smith Jr., Rikishi, Orlando Jordan, Brent Dale, que estaba con WC también, WWC. Pero el de Rikishi me parece interesante porque en aquel momento Rikishi daba el Sting Face a todo el mundo. Eso era clásico. Hay un detalle. Para la suerte de Andy, para su buena suerte, Rikishi no estaba dando el Sting Face ya porque Vince le pidió ser serio esa noche o un poquito más serio. Y Andy dice, mira, pues yo estoy dispuesto a hacer lo que sea, porque a WWE le gustaba probarte, a ver cuánto estaba dispuesto a aguantar. Y él dice, pues mira, lo que haya que hacer lo hacemos. No te preocupes, no hay que hacer el Sting Face porque Vince me está pidiendo que sea un poco más serio, a menos que tú quieras que te el Sting Face. No, créeme, estamos bien. Y esos fueron como que sus 6 tryouts oficiales con WWE.